All right, today we're diving into something that feels like it's straight out of a cutting-edge scientific paper, but with a twist. It's called Structured Multiversal Interactions, and it basically proposes a whole new way to think about and even shape reality itself. Right off the bat, the paper hits us with this incredible quote from the author, Saikou Venga. This one sentence just completely sets the stage for a really mind-bending idea, that we're not just passive bystanders looking at parallel universes. Nope. It suggests we're active players who can actually leave our mark and build what it calls a playable truth. Okay, so what does that even mean in practice? Well, this first section is all about a huge shift in thinking. We're moving the whole idea of the multiverse from just a cool theory you talk about to something you can actually directly interact with. And this is a massive leap, right? The old way of thinking was all about speculative modeling, basically making educated guesses and running simulations. But this new model, interactive diagnostics, claims we can actively probe other realities and get direct feedback. I mean, that's a total game changer. So, how is this even possible? Well, it all comes down to this core concept they call responsive membranes. You gotta forget the old image of universes as these separate, lonely bubbles. Instead, picture them more like giant, interconnected sheets that can actually influence one another. They can create cause and effect, exert real physical forces like gravity, and even let their storylines merge together. All right, so if these universes can interact, how does that actually work? Let's get into the nitty-gritty. This next part breaks down the 4 core mechanics that supposedly make this all possible. This is where the theory gets super specific. First up, we've got cross-reality feedback loops. The idea here is pretty wild. A choice you make right here, right now, could actually send ripples out and change the odds and possibilities in a whole other universe. And this isn't just a theory. They claim it can be measured with a special device called the Reality Level Analyzer. It's like a cosmic cause and effect system. Next is a really cool take on quantum entanglement. The paper calls it multiversal memory clusters. But here's the best part. They use this awesome gaming metaphor. They act as mythic save points. How cool is that? It's like when you're hopping between dimensions, these points lock in your information, creating a kind of continuity across all these different realities. Then we get to gravitational influence mapping, and this one is wild. It suggests that universes close to ours can literally, physically, pull on our reality. These forces create actual distortions in our world that are so tangible they're described as playable terrain. Just imagine the landscape around you being subtly warped by the universe next door. And finally, we have AI-driven messaging. This is basically what it sounds like, cross-dimensional communication. Using these special symbols called glyphic overlays, we can supposedly send organized bits of information from our universe to another. Think of it like sending a text message across the multiverse. Okay, so let's just run that back real quick. We've got feedback loops from our choices, mythic save points for memory, gravitational forces creating playable terrain, and glyphs that let us send messages across dimensions. But here's the thing. The document says this isn't just theory anymore. It's actually being used. So this is where things get really interesting. The paper claims these incredible theories are actually being put into practice. This isn't just some dusty academic idea, it's being integrated into competitive events and even media. It honestly sounds like a super advanced video game come to life. And they give 2 really specific examples. First, the TrueFlow Tournament, a combat event where fighters are supposedly using that gravitational influence to manipulate the battlefield in real time. And second, Echo Rift Broadcasts, a media series that embeds these data glyphs into the episodes, and get this, their effects apparently change based on multiversal drift, the natural shifting of these parallel realities. Okay, by now you've got to be asking, who on earth came up with all of this? And the paper is very careful to build a case for its own legitimacy. It's not presented as some random thought experiment. It has a whole academic framework and a credited author behind it. The author is identified as Saikou Venga, but also by what seems to be a real-world name, Dr. Melvin Sewell, who holds both a Master of Science and a Ph.D. You see credentials like that, and they're clearly trying to ground this radical theory in a foundation of serious academic achievement.
And it doesn't stop there. This framework, Structured Multiversal Interactions, or SMI, is apparently being taught at something called the Cosmic University. On top of that, the Reality Level Analyzer device has reportedly entered provisional patent status. I mean, it all sounds incredibly official.
But just when you think you have a handle on it, right at the end of the document, there's a disclaimer. And this is where the entire narrative takes a very sharp turn. What we thought we were reading might be something else entirely. So, after all that, the patents, the university courses, the complex science, you have to ask, is this a genuine breakthrough? Is this really the future of physics? Well, according to the document's own fine print, not exactly. And this is where the real purpose of this whole thing starts to come into focus. The disclaimer states that these materials are authored as mythic infrastructure, cinematic indictment, and sovereign broadcast. It explicitly says that the glyphs and protocols are diagnostic tools, not political statements or critiques of institutions. This changes everything. So let's just unpack that for a second. Mythic infrastructure. That sounds less like science and more like the building blocks for a new story, a modern mythology. Cinematic indictment. That implies it's a form of criticism, but delivered through the language of movies and narratives, not academic papers. And sovereign broadcast? That means it's a message that exists on its own terms, a signal sent out into the world independent of any authority. Which leaves us with one last massive question. If this whole thing isn't physics, but a diagnostic tool wrapped in the language of science and gaming, what is it diagnosing? Maybe it's a critique of how we consume information, or how we build worlds, or maybe it's a new form of interactive art. The document doesn't give us the answer. Instead, it seems to be handing us this weird, complicated new lens and asking us to use it to diagnose our own reality.